Welcome to the Marshall McAdam Talking Tech and Talent podcast, where Australian business leaders and experts discuss the technology and talent challenges facing organisations today and the opportunities available to innovative businesses in the future. Let's get the conversation started.
Curtis, welcome. Absolute pleasure to have you here today.
A pleasure to be here, Tim.
You now get the obligatory...
It's my adoring fans.
Oh, it's good. It's longer than some people, so that's good.
I have more fans, I guess.
Absolutely. Hey, look, it's a good time to be here because it's exciting times at Endeavour Group. Significant transformation, significant growth, and not least the hunt for 300 technology professionals.
Just 300.
Just 300. Today is really about exploring some of this kind of context. As we all know, technology professionals have choice in the market currently. And I really want to use today to get under the skin of what it really feels like to work at Endeavour Group and to explore some of the talent acquisition messages and to flesh them out once the sort of the rubber hits the road, if you like, or the beer hits the lips, and what it feels like to be a part of this journey.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's do it.
Before we get into the whole Endeavour conversation, we've got to find out something about the Curtis sitting opposite me.
What to say? Well, once upon a time, probably like everyone, I would have said I live to travel, but that feels like not only a cliche, but just wrong these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fortunately for me, I guess winter at the moment, as bad as the snow might be, that's probably my crutch, I guess. Getting down to the snow. Big snowboarder. I think I own about 8 boards.
No way.
Yeah, for no apparent reason. So I'll be back down at the snow in another week and getting as much time down there as I can.
Fantastic. I want you to talk about a couple of things, really. I want to talk about your career path prior to Endeavour, just to understand a bit of that journey. And then I want to understand what attracted you to Endeavour at the point you first joined, which I think was about 18 months back.
It's a long story, but the short version would be I was a terrible student, mate. I all but flunked out of high school. So I did what every self-respecting person was. I went to the nearest bowl store and tried to get myself a job. Yeah. And I actually ended up working in independent liquor, so Porter's Liquor over in the North Shore. And then come 8 years later, I was what's called licensee. So my name was on the door, responsible for a couple of stores here in Sydney City. So straight out of the box, I guess I just had this love for the drinks industry, right? Now, I probably had the world's youngest midlife crisis at my mid-20s when I realized that, I run a couple stores. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? As I read the paper in the morning. So off I went. I applied for uni. Fortunately, I had won a couple of awards through the state for retail. Got into Sydney Uni, got really lucky getting a job at an advertising agency, this brilliant agency called the Zoo Republic. They specialise in experiential campaigns for liquor. So I got to work on campaigns for Carlton United and Diageo and a few others. So that was really serendipitous. From there, I got lucky again, I guess. My career seems like luck at this point. I swear I worked hard at some interval. The next leg of my life, I guess, was the product leg. So I joined a company called Pure Profile. They were a privately held company at the time, working on we had a founder CEO who was just phenomenal. But it really gave so much opportunity to grow and learn, and I guess I transitioned. I joined that company not knowing anything about data and technology, not knowing anything about agile or product. I didn't know what a product manager was. But over those half a dozen years, I went from a junior project coordinator on my first day through to be head of product for a ASX-listed public company. And I think it was all those opportunities and those challenges, and fortunately just surrounded by some really brilliant both engineers, technical leaders, and inspiration. So,
and then at that point, you make the decision to either move or to join Endeavour Group. What was that decision based around?
I made the decision that for me to continue to grow, I needed to go and find the next challenge. Okay. Endeavour Group didn't come up straight away, funnily enough. I started that and, I went to all the big names, right? So I did 8 rounds of interviewing with Canva. I was 4 or 5 rounds in through with Google, a few with Atlassian, right? And it was like almost the final hour, right? I had to start making some decisions on some of those other opportunities, and I saw the role for Endeavour. If you go and work in a very large, one of these massive, large technology businesses, you'll be lucky if you're responsible for a sidebar. Do you know what I mean? Like that would be a big gig, a sidebar. Wow. Yeah. And you've got 6 approvals and 2 steering committees for your sidebar changes. And I think when I spoke with Andy and the Endeavour team, I just got this sense of it was something much bigger than that, right? It was a company that was still working out what it meant to be a technology business and transitioning into what it is now, right? For me, that was just so much more important than the name or.
I think you're probably a good example of a lot of people who almost subconsciously are drawn towards the big names when they're in their next career move or their career search, and it's the ones you name check, it's the Googles, the Canvas, etc. But without necessarily really reflecting on what it means to work there. And also on a very specific point, a lot of these large tech businesses are obviously US headquartered.
Right, yeah.
So you end up in a somewhat different business.
Definitely.
Or a very different business.
Definitely. Your customer is a million miles away from you, right? For us, for Endeavour, we're in Pyrmont today, right? The Harlequin's up the road. If I walk into the Harlequin, that's my office. Like I can literally grab a seat upstairs or sit down and work. So that connection with, I'm sitting there thinking about their drinks range. I'm thinking about, the punter or the person having a beer with their friend or colleague, right? They're the customers that we represent. And for me, that is much more meaningful and powerful because I know I can change that experience that they're having, right? I think my first sense of the organization was when I joined, I quickly walked in thinking, geez, it's a big company, right? 26,000 employees. In fact, at the time, we were still part of Woolworths, so you could argue we're 64,000 employees or something. So you walk in and you get this vibe. But immediately, what I realized was how quickly things were changing, right? Because I would look at a process or a team and I'd say, why are we doing it that way? And they say, we only put that in 2 months ago. We're trying it. We're not liking it so far. We're thinking of getting rid of it. What do you think? It was very clear how intently the business was kind of looking for those answers. They weren't checkboxes on an interview, right? But that carried right through to my first week and first month on the job, where all of a sudden I'm a product manager. There's 40 of us, right, of differing levels, but straight away we're in a meeting saying, how do we change our whole planning process? What do we think, right? What should we just throw it out and start again? And that's a pretty powerful thing to be able to have that kind of influence in an organization of this size.
Absolutely.
So I guess coming into Endeavour, I had this voice in the back of my head that said, you're going to be, you're coming into this big organization. You're going from big fish in a small pond, and all of a sudden you're in the world's one of Australia's biggest ponds, right? Don't mess it up. Not to mention, so many customers. I think I'll give you an example. Okay. Right? I'll give you an example. I joined Endeavour and we were going straight away. First thing I did, basically walk through the door. Oh, Curtis, we're in a planning period, right? So we call it BRP, big room planning.
Okay.
You've got a week to put together a roadmap. You get your team together. You talk about how you're going to build to the roadmap you put together. Then you present it back to the business. In fact, it wasn't a week. You had 3 days, right? 3 days, you got to build roadmap, present it to your team, present it to the organization. Great. See you in 3 days.
Yeah, right.
So that's obviously that's challenging, right? But there were real problems with it. I guess there was environmental problems with it too. We were doing this every quarter, right? Okay. And that means you've got one of these planning periods, and this is as I joined, right in December. That's peak trading. So I gave the feedback and I said, I just don't think this is working. I think the teams are too stressed. I think the timelines are awkward with the Christmas holidays. And I think if you're planning for 3-month intervals, but you're taking 1 month to do planning, actually you're only giving people 4 sprints or maybe 5, fortnights.
Absolutely, yeah.
To deliver your dream, right? Yeah. Well, today, as of last year, the entire organization, 28,000 people now, do their planning in terms or trimesters, right? And so, so that was a recommendation I had. Let's plan in 4-month chunks. Let's stagger them out away from key trading periods. Let's put a planning section in so that you can actually really deliver against it. I mean, it would have been very easy for the company to keep doing what they wanted to do, but they, you're talking about an event that hits dozens of teams, 500-600 technology team members, not to mention all of leadership, all of everyone, and they just tried it. Now, will it work out? I hope so. But if it doesn't, do you know what? I know for a fact, no one's going to come around and say, well, whose terrible idea was that, right? It was It was something we tried, something we're trying. It seems to be going well so far. We're literally in our first trimester, and we're starting to plan for the second. So
fantastic.
Here we are. For me, from my impression is I did walk through the door still expecting this to fundamentally be a big company. I still expected to hit stakeholders that were challenging, to have to go through 12-month project plans. There were some of those, but they were so few and far between, right? Some of the teams and projects that I picked up, I had to go back to all the way through to our CEO and say, we are approaching this the wrong way. This is the wrong solution. And literally with one-on-ones with our CEO, said, fine, change it. And I think that was blew my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Now let's go into a bit more detail about your role. To bring that to life. So can you give me a sense of the mission of your role in the context of that transformation at Endeavour? Or perhaps rephrase, what does success look like in your role as a senior product manager in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think, Tim, the role of a product manager starting to join data and analytics teams, right, is a transition in itself, because product managers are fundamentally a conduit between business, customers, and technology. Right. Our job is to prioritize at size and identify first, prioritize and size the opportunities that present themselves to the business. 5 years ago, right, we weren't doing that in data and analytics. Data and analytics was about insights. It was about, okay, there was data science happening, but it wasn't connected in the same way as it needs to be to customer outcomes and benefits, making real change, right, in ways that matter. And I think that's what my role is at Endeavour, right? Okay. It is to bring those things together and make sure that we have all the information we need and we understand the customer problem that we're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. And then that gives the teams, our squads, the freedom to operate within that, right? It's not my job to, and I certainly don't, look over other people's shoulders or challenge the solution or design that the team comes up with. Because if I've done my job well and they really understand why we're doing this thing, then they have the freedom to go and choose the tools, put the team together they need, the resources, and just really execute it at excellence that we need them to.
And the measure of success, either of your input or the squad's, your output or the squad's output, etc. Right. Is that predominantly qualitative, quantitative, a combination? It
has to be a combination. And here's the problem, I guess, of big business sometimes gets distracted and hyper-focused on acronyms like EBIT and profit and obviously these things are critical, right?
Yes.
But especially in a business like ours, you're talking about real customer moments and experiences that they have, right? So you can't track the performance of any of our teams based on whether or not they cut $100 million out of the business or not, because you have to look at the experiences that changed. And that means that we have to measure ourselves on not only quantitative, but also qualitative. How do customers feel when they come into one of our stores? Are they coming into our stores again? Great, I can save $100 million tomorrow by putting the price of everything up by $5, right?
Yes. Yep.
It'll run us into the ground very quickly. It's very easy to manipulate those kind of metrics. So I think as a product person, right, it's making sure that we're measuring those metrics that actually matter and that actually are going to move our business forwards in a meaningful way with our customers.
But I think one of the things that's interested me with Endeavour is the notion of cross-functional teams, very focused on delivering priority use cases. Now, I'm not suggesting that's unique. However, I've got a feeling you guys sort of uniquely embrace it. So I'd just like to understand a little bit around that cross-functional team, the prioritizing of user case studies, and just how that plays out in the real world.
Yeah, look, I read somewhere that
And sorry, with my question, am I right that in a sense defines the feel of your role, this interaction, this cross-functional piece?
It does. And that is definitely the mass majority of my time is in building those relationships between the right people in the right places. But, I read somewhere that cross-functional teams were invented in the 1950s or something rubbish like that. But that's not true, of course, right? I mean, even within our communities, right? If you think about since the dawn of time, everyone specializes into a role, shares a common goal of whatever, right? Getting food on the table the next day, right? Yeah. And everyone goes out and does their parts.
Yeah.
So it's really just common sense to bring that ethos of let people specialize, get people who are the best in their field and put them together in a room to solve the hardest problems.
I think what's actually happened is it was never invented, it was innate.
I think
and
I
has then been
agree.
dialed out by organizations.
I absolutely agree. We started to compartmentalize. It was easy to manage people, right? It was easy to lead people if you had a team of just marketers and team
blame people. A lot easier to blame people.
Much easier to blame people. The bloody data scientists off in their own world again. But so no one invented that, right? So I really think it is. Yes, it is part of what makes my role, but it's also the most natural part of my role, right? It's the most natural part of the organization. Is why wouldn't you put a head of merchandising, someone who makes all the decisions about our wine purchasing and the awards and stuff that we win? Why wouldn't you put them with the data scientist trying to build out the model of tastes and flavors, and the analyst who's trying to compare or capture customer information on their purchases and stuff? Why wouldn't you put them in a room? Because there's something really magic that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
I've got to say, I think that's it's been great coming into Endeavour and seeing that embedded. It's not first nature for everyone, because I think we are moving out of an era of organizations working in a different way. But then, exactly as you said, it is innate within us that is the way that we produce excellence. So it's very, very natural.
And that's presumably a huge positive of having joined. I mean, that must empower you.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, if anything, I've worked in, like I said, supported some startups, I worked in small mediums. There's more cross organization collaboration in an organization of this size, because it can actually afford to really embrace it. It's like a critical mass because we're not as resource constrained as those SMEs and stuff. So you can actually say, I do need a head of category or a head of merchandising to join this for a bit.
Yeah.
Right? Because they go, geez, that's expensive. You say, yeah, but it's going to be worth it, right? So it's actually embraced more here than plenty of much smaller organizations that I've seen and worked in.
And then the other thing I wanted to understand is you've touched on one or two metrics about scale at Endeavour. I think you mentioned 28,000 employees briefly. You may or may not have mentioned that. But I want to understand the scale of measurable results of your efforts. What can that look like?
That is actually, it still today blows my mind, Tim. I mean, it is the immeasurable size of this organization, right? This year, we represent 40% of all retail liquor. Right, think about that.
40%.
40%, 60% of all e-commerce liquor.
Yeah.
Every month, 6 million Australians will interact with one of our brands. That's 1 in 4 Australians, right?
Right, okay.
So when you go to build something or design something, you've got to really think about the fact that, if you're going to build an algorithm for pricing VB better, right? 6 million customers are going to walk into your store and see that price. And that's either going to make them walk to the back and pick up that case, or it's going to make them walk out. That is very tangible. That's very real.
That could keep somebody awake at night.
It could keep someone awake at night, or it could keep someone really excited. Because you're not like doing something for 10,000 people or 1,000 people. You can't doubt the scale of what it is that we're building
it's
and
phenomenal.
how that touches Australian people in almost every single town in Australia. Literally, we have presence.
I know it's a fabric of Australian culture.
It absolutely is. So getting to work on those problems and think about how do we optimize the taps, right? Because the local manager at the pub might kill me at the Harlequin when I go there later. But, they make the best decision they can on which taps they should have. But how do we bring data science into that? How do we look at the demographics of the area? We're just near the star. You get transient trade, which means you need a certain, different demographics at different times.
Yeah,
what if we could change the taps by the hour to optimize based on the customers coming in, right? That's where we get to apply our field and our science to something that, like I said, 6 million people tomorrow will experience, and then hopefully, if we do our jobs well, in a really positive manner.
Good, that's awesome. That's absolutely fascinating stuff. I think that gives people a real sense of. I mean, what I hear from all of that detail is this connection. It's absolute direct connection, ability to have an impact, an ability to directly implement or actually try ideas, try decisions, and see how they play out.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is quite unique. Certainly, I haven't seen it before. Is that willingness, I guess, to truly put your money where your mouth is and try things, right? And again, it's something that comes with scale, where we can afford to experiment more, right? And sometimes those experiments are hugely expensive, and sometimes they're hugely disastrous. But we do actually get to do that, right? And
there will be learnings from the disasters.
Always learnings. I mean, I think
Hopefully.
that's the most important thing, and having a culture that embraces that, right?
Yeah.
Embraces that failure. As long as you take that and move forward to the next crazy idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as somebody who works in that sort of industry of talent acquisition, I've been very impressed by recent messaging from Endeavour Group. And I think I used a phrase earlier. It gives me this sense that there's a real confidence that it's an awesome place to work, but there's no arrogance. There's very clearly a sense that Endeavour Group need to articulate why somebody might want to explore opportunities there. But I wanted to look at some of those messages and just try and do your best to think about how they might play out in the reality.
Yeah.
And hopefully how they flow through to the reality. So let's have a look at some of these. I'm going to start with a very self-explanatory one that doesn't really need much explanation. But, Endeavour talks about being deeply embedded in the way Australians socialise, unwind and celebrate. You've touched on that, but it's very powerful.
Right. Think about the fact that we are Australia's single largest retailer in number of stores. We are Australia's single largest hotel group, right? That means that we're in more stores, more towns, more areas, more rurals than anyone else in this country. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, right? And we have to be very real about the way that we treat that. We talk about, if you're we shouldn't rag on banks. If you're a bank,
you want to.
If you're a bank, your CSR policy looks like you get to do some green initiatives. Yeah, we've carbon neutral banking, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't fly when you're so diverse and in so many communities as we are doing what we do, right? Our social responsibility policy, yes, all right, our Dan Murphys, a good number of those are now completely green, solar panel, building back, but it doesn't stop there. What about the impact that we have on those cultures that we join? What about the employees? What about when there's floods, how can we help rebuild? How do we...
Yeah, right.
Our responsibility has to go much further than that. And that is something that is really powerful and important to me, and it's something that, rarely do you get to an organization where you can influence that, right?
It sounds like there's a heart to the business.
There is a very strong heart to the business, and people are very quick to call it out. You'll be in a meeting and someone will shut down an idea or jump up if they feel like that is going against, We still do the pub test, right? You still go,
yeah, right.
Could you explain this? What would we agree if we were just having a beer at the pub, right?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't hold up, if you're telling it to your mates at the pub, we're probably talking rubbish.
Now, a couple of other phrases. We're going to put these two together. We've got the group, since demerger from its parent, a year and a half, 2 years back, frequently described, I think, as a $15 billion startup, which sounds, I think exciting and intriguing. I want to understand how that plays out. And then on a related note, also hear Endeavour talk of being, quote, big enough to have scale, small enough to make an outsized impact at an individual level.
Yeah.
So I think those things probably go together, but perhaps...
Yeah, look,
talk to
I've got to say, I've worked at a few startups, and I've done some consulting for some, very early through to large scale and successful. It's probably a lot less time spent at the pub when you work for Endeavour. But, hey, we might own that pub.
The irony, yes.
So, look, I do think we have to be real. When you're a 28,000 or whatever it is person in business, there are certain things that come with that, certain responsibilities that come with that as well.
Yes.
To team and people and culture. But I gave the example earlier about, the individual impact that, even I've been able to have since joining in our core ways of working, right? And I think that is...
And remember, a high school dropout, is having an impact. I
said flunky. I did make it through year 12.
Flunky, sorry, yes. High school flunky is having an impact, yeah.
But, I think that's really special, right? If you have a crazy and wonderful idea, right? If you can put that business case together, that happens because we have that scale. We can be 1% better at that thing. Great. Well, here's $50 million because you just promised me $100 million every year, right?
Yeah, right.
Where else are you going to find that, right? So you actually get a lot of the freedom and flexibility that you get in those startups of being able to pivot, right? But you actually get the benefit of actually being our pony up for it.
Some resource.
Got some pony behind you. Look, the only other thing I would say, and I touched on this earlier in terms of impact, because I think this is increasingly more important, and it's certainly important to me and my role at Endeavour is connecting what was once upon a time isolated and probably quite frustrated data and analytics teams, right, who maybe built phenomenal technology, but in a silo that wasn't connected with an outcome.
Yes. Okay, yep.
And I've spoken with a lot of business leaders, top 4 bank leaders, other retailers, and the frustration is always the same. It's like, oh, well, I don't know what they're doing. Like, they're building great things, but they're not not connected, right? I've got very expensive dashboards, right? And of course, it probably isn't even a dashboard. But when you're in a business that touches 6 million people every month, right? And I keep beating on that because I think it's so important to why it's to how you empower your team to make decisions. Because if they understand that decision or that AI or that, we're going to lay out the store differently or roster our team members differently is really going to impact millions of people tomorrow, right? If we're doing a rostering AI project, one of the areas we're working in, right? If we add more team members, we know that a customer who has a one-on-one interaction with a team member puts 30% more in their basket.
Yeah, right.
So if we build rostering AI, it's not about stripping cost out necessarily, right? Because if you keep the customer in mind, you'll start to realize there's actually much more opportunity if we put cost in, right? And so what started as a project around, save us some EBIT has actually now turned into a whole project around increase our revenue, right? But that still doesn't get me, that's not what gets the teams excited. Yep. It's the real world that a customer, your mum, your dad, your friends are going to walk into a store, they're going to have a team member come up to them, recommend them. That's real, right? 1 million times a week or more.
It's amazing. It is amazing.
It is. But I've got to say, our leadership team and the leaders of this business, they're so. If you position that right, what they probably signed off on as a cost out project. But you put that meeting in, you say, guys, let's real talk here for a second. Yeah, it's not cost out anymore. We're actually going to add cost, but here's why. I've never experienced a company that is faster to say, you know what, try it, go for it. Take 10 stores, take 100 stores. Let's put this in place, run it for 3 months, see how it goes. If you're right, you're right. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Yeah. Right. But
we'll know.
Yeah. Right.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Now, I think we've probably covered these messages. They were creating a more sociable future together and leaving a positive imprint on our teams and the communities we serve.
Yeah, look, I think we have spoken about the social, and we have also spoken about the imprint. They're not just words. I know, like mission statements and stuff. I was like, whatever. It's a poster on the wall. I spoke earlier about CSR means something different to us because we are having an impact in those societies those communities which we operate. It really does drive so much decision making in our business. Even when you come to pubs and the layout, you got TAB, you've got gaming rooms, right? We're thinking about the impact that has on those communities, right? Both positive, because there's a lot of positive to be drawn from the social occasions that happen, but we also have to be mindful of the negative, right? And we have to face into that and think about what's best for not just our company and our profit line, but actually literally in our case, we're in every town in Australia. So we've got to think about how we impact Australia and leave that community, right?
Yeah. And I think you've explained that those conversations genuinely happen. So
every day.
Presumably as no longer a flunky, a talented leader in technology, let's call you.
Thank you.
With phenomenal, unique ideas. You want anything else? You want to continue to develop and grow. And I wanted to understand two things briefly, which is really what does your own development kind of need? What do you aspire to, and how is Endeavour, I guess, delivering on that?
Let me start with the latter question, I suppose.
Okay.
And then maybe I'll cover off the former. When I look around Endeavour, right, I joined shy of 2 years ago. I'm not sure, and I'm trying to think to myself as I say this, but I'm not sure there's a single person that I can think about that has the exact same role they did 18 months ago.
Okay.
Whether that's my peers, whether that's my boss, whether that's my team members, we have completely changed. Endeavour X did an entire restructure where they threw out the rule book and they said, what job do you want, right? What team do you want to work in? And everyone applied for their own roles, right? Okay. We referred to it as squadification, but everything went out the window and came back together, right? When I think about that fluidity to be able to define what it is that excites you, right? So you're still within your specialization, right? I'm not going to start coding tomorrow, right? Yeah. But the ability to transition to the use cases and the projects that excite you, that are going to have the impact that you want to drive, I think that's really powerful. And I think our teams are really empowered by it. So if you're a data scientist and you're working on a personalization engine, building modeling for one-to-one customer advertising or whatever it is, but you say, actually, I'd rather go work on that rostering thing. That sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? You can do that tomorrow. I've just yesterday got a team member who was from a different analytics and insights team, because he said, actually, I kind of like the stuff that they're doing over there around our product data system. So I think that is really fundamental, because not only are team members able to grow within their field, but we've got so much going on. We don't have time to leave, we don't have time to have people stuck doing things they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Move on, right? We'll work out how to backfill, right? And there's not always smooth sailing.
I love that. I mean, people must absolutely love that.
Look, there's always some friction, right? There's always, nothing is as perfect, but I think we tried that model. It overall was overwhelmingly positive. We saw saw some kinks. We're going to iterate and reiterate.
But a lot of organizations, your value is solely linked to what you are doing, and woe betide you consider stop doing it or suggest you'd like to do something else.
Well, I guess it's
a common theme in large organizations. People are siloed and they're stuck.
Yeah. You've got two options, right? One, allow people to move. Two, they'll leave. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we all get the LinkedIn, we all get the recruiters, we all get the...
or they'll stay and be phenomenally miserable and unproductive.
Or, I mean, that's the worst. That's the worst one. Hopefully you don't have that one, or maybe there's other cultural problems at play. But
organizations do have that, absolutely, yeah.
True. But, I think we just have to be smarter than that. You can't afford to do that anymore, right? They will just leave. So understanding what actually excites each person, right? You don't lose the knowledge. You don't, you move them to another team. Even going right back to that cross-functional stuff we spoke about earlier, now you're not just talking about having a marketing person and a data scientist in the room. Now you're talking about the two data scientists in the room. One of them has a background in personalization and machine learning for matching products, and one of them has a background in store operations, and now you can really make something powerful, right? So you're starting to be cross-functional within cross-functional.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And that is genuinely magic, right? There's hard stuff to do, and it's pretty special when it works.
So I think by answering the second part, you've answered the first part.
Right, I think so, because I guess even for myself, I have changed which squads I lead, I've changed which missions, I've changed the objective of those squads, and we've pivoted the whole teams within that. So that has been very, very fulfilling for myself.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, my final thing, which is just very pertinent in the world of talent acquisition, is flexibility. We have a whole range of clients, some of whom wouldn't even want to mention the word flexibility. Instant demand that everybody is back in harness at their desk. Others who talk a very good game, but it very quickly evaporates when somebody actually
Yeah, of course.
decides to be flexible. I know the answer to this from lots of conversations, but you guys really embrace flexibility, don't you?
I don't understand how organizations can try and do anything but these days. Like there's no going back to the way that things used to be, right? There's an irrevocable change in our culture.
Yeah.
And we simply know that people don't need to be in the office to execute, right? And again, it probably goes all the way back to team members really understanding and caring about the outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't even need someone to work a 40-hour week, let alone where they work it. As long as they are doing what absolutely they can within that time to deliver the outcomes that we're aiming for. Yeah. So do they online at 9 a.m.? Do they live in Sydney? Do they, who cares, right? Yeah. My team members are here because we trust them because they're the best at what they do.
Yeah.
So let's just enable them to do that. Okay, we're going to have a stand-up once a day, but you know what? Zoom's fine, right? Yeah. It's a check-in. We don't need to be there.
You might be slightly surprised I'm asking because you may feel, well, isn't that the norm now? No, it's not. We directly have organizations who will talk a similar game, and the moment somebody says, well, look, I'm actually moving. I'm moving to Byron is the classic.
Yeah.
There isn't much interest on a personal level of, hey, that's going to be awesome. It's sorry, you're moving to Byron. But I thought we were doing the flexibility well.
No, we've got that. Look, it does. I am in the luxury or circumstance, I guess, that does blow my mind. Right, we've got team members all across Australia, across Southeast Asia, Europe. It is irrelevant if you can do your job and you can execute against what is important. Right. Then we've got the world is a new place. We've got technology. You can dial in. You can, and I do think that there is still something. I will say that I do still think that there is something to be said about face-to-face personal relationship building. I think it is very hard to replace that still with the technology that we have. But that can be done in so many different ways, including once a year, bring everyone to one central place. That doesn't have to be here either, by the way. That can be somewhere else. But you can build that in different ways. It does not mean 9 to 5 coming into the city and commuting back and forth. It's ridiculous. Absolutely.
Well, it's good to hear because it is honestly such a, going back to this very transparent point is, if Endeavour Group, Endeavour Group is looking to attract some of the best technology talent in Australia and beyond, you've got to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah.
So to hear it from you and to see you just come alive and say, oh, look, this is on a number of fronts. This is just, you've mentioned the word luck a few times. I kind of feel now that you feel, I'm in a lucky position here.
It is. I think that every day. We still do things virtual, by the way. We still do, leaving loudly on Fridays. Say, guys, I'm calling it 3:00. I'm heading to the pub, right? Yep. I'm going to catch up with some friends. Yep. Because you shouldn't be embarrassed by that, right? No. Did you get your work done? Did you do what we hoped you did this week? So what are you still doing online, right? Yeah. I do feel lucky to be an organization.
Well, I'm trying to show you that I'm online.
Yeah. My green light has to stay on, right? No. You're like, no. Bugger the green light. Close it down.
Absolutely. Hey, look, that's fantastic. It's all been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
No, it was fantastic. That was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, a lot of fun, and I just really hope it's partly our role to help listeners and viewers, engage with some of this. But I hope people really appreciate, I guess, hearing from somebody on the ground as to, in a very candid manner as well, as to really what the reality is of the things we hear about, because we've all been in the job market and there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of messages and there's a lot of, nicely written job adverts. But at some point you want to talk to somebody who's saying, I'm doing this job. And, yes, it's not perfect, but hey, this is bloody good and this is bloody good. And
yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's come across. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming, and talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for joining. This podcast was brought to you by Marshall McAdam, creating talent solutions in technology, transformation, data and analytics, and project services across Australia. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, and share. If you'd like to get in touch with the Marshall McAdam team, simply send an email, visit the website, or connect on LinkedIn. Contact details can be found in the description. See you next time.